I never thought that my dress, bought with my last savings, would become a rag in the hands of my daughter-in-law. Sarah stood in the kitchen, wiping the table with my new silk dress, laughing as if it were a joke. My son Tom was silent, looking away. At that moment, something in me cracked. They thought I was weak, but I was no longer the Alice who kept quiet. I decided that they would pay for every insult. And I knew where to start. Please let us know where you are listening in the comments and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. I froze in the kitchen doorway, my grocery bags slipping from my hands. The plastic crinkled as they hit the floor, apples rolling like scattered thoughts. Sarah stood there, my new dress bunched in her fist, wiping circles on the table. The silk, so carefully chosen from the clearance rack, was streaked with coffee stains, its sheen dulled by grease. Her laugh grated, high and mocking, as she tossed her hair, her manicured nails glinting under the dim fluorescent light. "Your dress?" she said, catching my eye, her voice dripping with fake surprise. "Oh, I thought it was some old rag." The words hit like a slap. My hands trembled, but I kept my face still, jaw tight. Tom shuffled near the fridge, his rumpled shirt untucked, staring at his phone. Not a word. Not a glance. My son, who once clung to my hand crossing the street, now stood complicit in this humiliation. The kitchen, with its chipped counters and overflowing sink, felt smaller, the air thick with betrayal. I stepped forward, my shoes squeaking on the linoleum, and snatched the dress from the table. It was damp, heavy with the weight of their disregard. "Mine," I said, my voice low, steady despite the storm inside. Sarah raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. "Not exactly Gucci, is it, Alice?" she quipped, turning to rinse a mug, dismissing me. Tom muttered something about work still not meeting my eyes, and slipped out the back door. Alone with the wreckage, I clutched the dress, its fabric soft but ruined, a mirror of how they saw me, useful, then discarded. I couldn't stay in that suffocating room. The garden called, its cool evening air a balm against my burning skin. I stepped outside, the screen door creaking shut behind me. The roses, their petals wilting in the dusk, swayed in the breeze. I sank onto the wooden bench, the dress draped across my lap like a wounded thing. My fingers traced its seams, each stitch a reminder of the rare joy I'd felt buying it. For years, I'd poured everything into this house, this family, only to be mocked in my own kitchen. The sting of Sarah's laughter echoed in my mind, matched by Tom's silence. Enough. I wouldn't swallow this anymore. As the stars blinked into view, a resolve hardened in me, sharp as a blade. They'd underestimated me for too long. The garden was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves under a crescent moon. I sat on the bench, the ruined dress still in my lap, its damp silk cool against my skin. The roses, planted when Tom was a boy, drooped in the shadows, their scent faint but heavy with memory. My fingers brushed a petal, soft and fragile, and I was pulled back, years collapsing into a single moment. Tom, barely 5, giggling as he handed me a muddy trowel, his tiny hands smudged with dirt. "For you, Mommy," he'd said, pointing at the first rose we'd planted. That boy was gone, replaced by a man who couldn't look me in the eye. I stood, the dress slipping to the bench, and wandered to the edge of the garden. The old photo in my room tugged at me, demanding to be seen. Inside, my bedroom was a time capsule, creaky floorboards, a faded quilt, a wooden dresser holding relics of a life I'd traded away. I pulled open the drawer, the scent of aged paper rising as I lifted the photo. Tom, 12, in his school uniform, grinning with a gap-toothed smile. I'd worked double shifts at the library then, saving every penny for his tuition. My dreams of teaching shelved to give him a future. My thumb traced his face, the ache in my chest sharp. Another memory flickered. Sarah, 2 years ago, lounging in the living room, her designer bag slung over the couch. "You should update your wardrobe, Alice," she'd said, her smile thin as she sipped wine. "Those blouses are so dated." I'd laughed it off, but the jab lingered, a reminder of my place in her world. The old woman in the background, tolerated but not respected. Tom had been there, scrolling on his phone, offering nothing but a shrug when I glanced at him. His silence hurt worse than her words. Back in the present, I sank into the chair by my desk, the photo still in hand. A leather-bound notebook lay open, its pages blank until now. I grabbed a pen, the nib scratching as I wrote their names, Sarah, Tom. The ink bled slightly, mirroring the mess of my thoughts. Every sacrifice, nights spent balancing checkbooks, the house I'd kept for them, had been taken for granted. Sarah's laughter in the kitchen wasn't new. It was the culmination of years of slights, each one a brick in the wall between me and my son. I'd been their safety net, their bank, their doormat. No more. The pen paused, hovering over the page. My eyes drifted to the roses outside, their silhouettes barely visible. I'd tended them through storms, through neglect, just as I'd tended this family. But roses could be pruned, cut back to thrive again. So could I. The notebook snapped shut, the sound sharp in the quiet room. They'd pay for every slight, every smirk. I didn't know how yet, but the seed of a plan took root, dark and certain. The notebook lay closed on my desk, its leather cover worn but solid, like the resolve settling in my bones. Through the window, the garden was a blur of shadows, the roses mere outlines against the night. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking, and let the silence of my room wrap around me. The air smelled of candle wax, a faint glow flickering on the wall. For years I'd been the glue holding this house together. But glue could crack. Tonight it shattered. I reached for a faded postcard tucked in a drawer, its edges soft from years of handling. "Love, Tom," it read, scrawled in a child's uneven hand. He'd been 10, proud of his first trip to camp. I held it a moment, then tore it in half, the rip loud in the quiet. The pieces fluttered to the floor. A goodbye to the boy I couldn't save from becoming the man who betrayed me. My hands didn't shake. They moved with purpose, pulling the notebook open again. The pen scratched as I wrote. Sarah status. Tom money. Their weaknesses laid bare. The phone rang, jarring me. I answered, keeping my voice even. It was Mr. Larson, the neighbor, his gravelly tone warm but gossipy. "Saw Sarah today," he said, chuckling. "Flaunting that new bag of hers, bragging about some gala. You going?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Not my scene," I replied, my mind already spinning. Sarah's obsession with appearances was her soft spot, a thread I could pull. "She's something, that one," Larson went on. "Always peacocking." I thanked him and hung up, the plan sharpening. I turned to the dresser, sliding open the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of scarves lay a folder, its corners yellowed but intact. The deed to the house, my name in bold print, stared back at me. This house, my house, was their lifeline, the one thing keeping their fragile world afloat. Tom's shaky job, Sarah's spending. They leaned on me, even as they mocked me. My fingers tightened on the paper, its weight grounding me. I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. The notebook beckoned. I scribbled again, ideas flowing like water through a broken dam. Sarah's wardrobe, her pride, her armor, every dress, every bag was a piece of her identity. Take that away and she'd crumble. I underlined her name, the pen digging into the page. The roses outside seemed to nod in approval, their shadows swaying. I closed the notebook, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Sarah loved her dresses. I'd start there. The glow of my ancient Dell laptop cast jagged shadows across my room, its hum a low growl in the quiet. The screen flickered, a hairline crack spiderwebbing the corner, but it still worked well enough to pull up Sarah's Instagram. Her latest post loaded. A selfie in a crimson dress, all sharp angles and forced smiles, captioned #luxury living with 20 likes. My lips twitched. She lived for those likes, for the validation of strangers. I opened my leather-bound notebook, the pen gliding as I jotted down details. Crimson dress, designer heels, that smug tilt of her chin. Each post was a map to her vanity, a blueprint of her weakness. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and inhaled the faint scent of polished wood from my old desk. The lamp's dim light pooled around me, leaving the corners of the room in shadow. Sarah's obsession with status wasn't new, but seeing it laid bare. Photo after photo of her posing with bags, dresses, sunglasses, sharpened my focus. She wasn't just vain, she was fragile. Strip away her props and she'd unravel. I scribbled another note. Debt? Her lifestyle screamed borrowed money, and I'd lent her plenty over the years, never repaid. The phone rang, shrill in the stillness. I picked it up, recognizing John's number. Our neighbor 70, always in a checkered shirt, always ready to gossip. "Alice, you hear about Tom?" he said. His voice slow, with that familiar whistle from his dentures. Grumbling about his boss again. Sounds like his job's on thin ice. I kept my tone light, prodding gently. Oh? He mentioned anything specific? John chuckled. Just that he's stressed. Sarah's spending doesn't help, I bet. Bingo. Tom's career was shaky, his confidence shakier. I think John hung up and added to my notebook, Tom job insecurity. With Sarah out for the evening, I slipped into her bedroom, the air thick with her floral perfume. Her closet was a shrine to excess. Silk blouses, sequin skirts, rows of heels like soldiers. My fingers brushed a black velvet dress, its price tag still dangling, $600. I snorted. She'd begged me for a loan last month, claiming it was for groceries. Digging deeper, I found a crumpled receipt in a drawer, tucked under a scarf. A handbag, $800 bought 3 weeks ago. My money. My house. My fool's patience. The receipt crinkled in my grip, a spark igniting my resolve. Back in my room, I slid the receipt into the notebook, its edges curling like a secret. The laptop screen still glowed with Sarah's curated life, a lie built on my sacrifices. I closed the notebook, the snap of its cover loud in the quiet. Sarah loved her dresses, her status, her illusion of control. Fine. I'd start with what she cherished most. The plan wasn't clear yet, but the receipt burned in my mind, a promise of what was to come. The laundry room was a cramped cave, its air sharp with detergent and the low hum of the washing machine. I stood by the open drum, a faded red tablecloth in one hand, Sarah's white silk dress, her pride, her gala showpiece, in the other. The dress's label screamed its brand, its cost, its place in her perfect image. I hesitated, my pulse quickening, then tossed both into the machine. The tablecloth's dye would bleed, a crimson ruin. I poured in detergent, slammed the lid and hit start. Water gurgled, the drum spinning with a soft thud. My lips curled. This was just the beginning. Footsteps pounded down the hall. Sarah burst in, her gray sweatsuit rumpled, hair a wild tangle. Her eyes locked on the machine's window where pink water swirled, the dress now a blotchy mess. No! She shrieked, lunging forward, clawing at the lid. It wouldn't budge, locked mid-cycle. You did this on purpose. Her voice cracked, raw with fury. I clutched an empty laundry basket, my face a mask of surprise. Oh, Sarah, I didn't know it was yours, I said, my tone soft, almost apologetic. Her glare could have burned holes through me. Tom shuffled in, his shirt wrinkled, eyes darting between us. Mom, how'd you miss that? He mumbled, scratching his neck. Sarah rounded on him, shoving his shoulder. Don't defend her. She's ruining everything. Her hand shook as she yanked at the machine again, cursing under her breath. I stepped back, the basket a shield, my heart racing but steady. Her rage was music, each note a validation of my choice. The dress, once pristine, was a casualty of her arrogance, and I felt no guilt, only a spark of triumph. Sarah slumped against the wall, the ruined dress dripping in her hands as the machine beeped its end. You'll regret this, Alice, she hissed, her eyes narrow. Promising war. I met her gaze, unflinching, then turned and walked out, the tiles cold under my feet. Upstairs, in my room, I shut the door and leaned against it, my breath shallow. The notebook waited on my desk, its pages hungry for the next step. Sarah's threat echoed, but it only fueled me. One dress down. Plenty more to go. I sat in the living room, the faded couch sagging under me, a photo of Tom in my lap. He was 8 in the picture, all freckles and a lopsided grin, clutching a baseball bat. The frame's plastic edge bit into my palm as I overheard Sarah's voice from the kitchen. Sharp and relentless. She ruined my dress, Tom. Your mother's out of control. Her words carried the bitter tang of coffee, the same scent lingering in the air. Tom's response was a low murmur, too soft to catch, but I knew that tone, placating, spineless. My grip tightened on the frame. Sarah's voice rose, cutting through the walls. We can't keep living like this. You need to talk to her about selling the house. My stomach twisted, the photo suddenly heavy. Selling my house, the one I'd paid for, maintained, poured my life into, was her endgame. I'd known she wanted control, but hearing it so baldly, so coldly, stung like a fresh wound. Tom's footsteps approached, hesitant, and he appeared in the doorway, his shirt creased, dark circles under his eyes. Mom, he started, his voice soft, almost pleading. Maybe we should talk about options. For the house. I stared at him, my son, the boy I'd raised, now parroting Sarah's demands. Options. I echoed, my voice ice. You mean selling my home? He shifted, eyes on the floor, a child caught misbehaving. It could help us, financially, he mumbled. Each word was a betrayal, a knife twisted by his weakness. I stood, the photo clattering onto the coffee table, its glass cracking faintly. This is my house, Tom, I said, each syllable deliberate. I'm not going anywhere. Sarah appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, her blue dress pristine, her red lipstick a slash of confidence. You can't squat here forever, Alice, she said, her smile cold, predatory. We need space, a future. Her eyes flicked to Tom, daring him to disagree. He didn't. His silence was louder than her taunts, a confirmation of where his loyalty lay. My chest ached, but I straightened, meeting her gaze. You want a future? I said. Build it somewhere else. The air crackled with tension, the living room's dim light casting long shadows. Sarah's smile didn't waver, but her eyes narrowed, calculating. Tom opened his mouth, then closed it, retreating into himself. I turned, the photo abandoned on the table, and headed upstairs, my steps firm despite the storm in my heart. In my room, I locked the door, the click a small act of defiance. The notebook waited, its pages a battleground. They wanted war? I'd give them one. The notebook lay open on my desk, its pages a battlefield of ink and intent. I traced my finger over the words, Sarah, status, Tom, money. The room was quiet, the cracked lamp casting a faint glow, its light pooling on the worn wood. The air smelled of old paper, grounding me as I planned my next move. Sarah's wardrobe, her armor of designer labels, was her pride, her identity. I'd sell it off, piece by piece, at the flea market. Tom's job, already shaky, could be nudged closer to collapse with a well-placed word to his boss. My pen tapped the page. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. I slipped into Sarah's bedroom, the scent of her perfume sharp in the air. Her closet gleamed with silk and sequins, a monument to her vanity. I pulled out dresses, emerald green, sapphire blue, each with a price tag that could have fed a family for weeks. My hands moved carefully, folding them into cardboard boxes labeled Christmas 2010, in faded marker. The fabric whispered against my fingers, a reminder of my own ruined dress, now a symbol of why I couldn't stop. I carried the boxes to the garage, the concrete floor cold under my slippers. Dust motes danced in the dim light, settling on Tom's old bicycle, untouched for years. I hid the boxes behind a stack of paint cans, my heart steady. Back in my room, I sat at the desk and drafted a letter. Dear Mr. Clark, I wrote, my handwriting precise despite the cheap paper. You may want to review Tom Green's recent reports. Errors in the Q3 budget could cost the company. I didn't sign it. No need. Tom's carelessness was real. I was just shining a light on it. The ink smudged slightly, a dark bloom under my thumb. I sealed the envelope, my pulse quick but calm. This would hit him where it hurt, his pride, his security. The phone was next. I dialed the flea market organizer, a chipper woman named Linda. Got a spot for Saturday? I asked, keeping my voice light. I've got clothes nearly new. She laughed, her voice crackling through the line. Designer stuff? You'll sell out fast. I smiled, confirming the details. The call ended and I leaned back, the chair creaking. Sarah's voice drifted from the kitchen, complaining about some gala. Good. Let her prattle. Tomorrow she'd learn what loss felt like. I stood in the garage again, checking the boxes one last time. The smell of gasoline and dust clung to the air, sharp and real. My fingers brushed the top box, the cardboard rough. Everything was in place. Sarah's dresses, Tom's career, both teetering on the edge. I turned back to the house, Sarah's voice still audible, a faint hum of ignorance. The night was young, and my plan was just beginning. The flea market buzzed with life, a chaotic symphony of haggling voices and the sizzle of food trucks. I stood behind a rickety wooden table, Sarah's dresses spread out like trophies. Crimson with sequins, black velvet, a pale gold gown that shimmered in the morning sun. Shoppers milled around, their fingers grazing the fabrics, drawn to the low prices. I kept my smile polite, my hands busy arranging scarves, but my eyes scanned the crowd. Then I saw her, Mary, Sarah's friend, in sneakers and a crossbody bag, holding the crimson dress up to the light. $10? She asked, grinning. I nodded. Sold. The transaction felt like a pulse, quick and alive. Mary tucked the dress under her arm, chattering about a party, oblivious to its owner. I stacked a few dollars in my tin, the clink of coins a small victory. The market smelled of roasted corn and coffee, the air warm with early summer. More buyers came, snatching up Sarah's treasures for pennies. A silk blouse for $5, heels for $3. Each sale chipped away at her facade, and I felt lighter, sharper, like a blade honed by purpose. A scream cut through the noise. Sarah shoved through the crowd, her jeans faded, her makeup smudged, eyes wild. She froze, staring at Mary, who was still clutching the crimson dress. That's mine. Sarah's voice cracked, raw with panic. The crowd turned, curious, their murmurs rising. I widened my eyes, feigning shock, a cardboard box in my hands. Sarah, I thought you didn't want these, I said, my tone soft, innocent. They were in the donation pile. Her face reddened, a vein pulsing at her temple. You liar, she spat, lunging for the dress. Mary stepped back, confused. Sarah, you said you were clearing out your closet, she stammered, glancing at the crowd. Laughter rippled through the onlookers, sharp and mocking. Sarah's hand shook, her breath ragged. This is my life you're selling, she yelled, but the words drowned in the market's hum. I set the box down, my heart racing but steady. Her humiliation was public now, her status crumbling like ash. Sarah snatched the dress from Mary, clutching it to her chest, then stormed off, dialing her phone. Tom, you fix this, she shouted into it, her voice fading into the crowd. I packed the remaining boxes, the tin heavy with cash. The market's noise swirled around me, but my mind was already home, plotting the next move. Sarah's call to Tom was a spark, and I knew their house was about to catch fire. The garden was cool, the evening air heavy with the scent of roses and damp earth. I sat on the bench, a ceramic mug of cold coffee in my hands, its bitter chill seeping into my palms. The house loomed behind me, its windows glowing faintly. Then I heard it, the slam of the front door, Tom's heavy steps. He looked wrecked, his suit wrinkled, sweat beading on his forehead despite the June breeze. His eyes were hollow, his shoulders slumped. I stayed still, blending into the dusk, watching as he disappeared inside. My letter had landed. Voices erupted from the living room, sharp and jagged. I stood, edging closer to the open window, the curtains fluttering like ghosts. Tom's briefcase hit the couch with a thud, papers spilling across the cushions, their edges curling in the dim light. They're auditing my work, Sarah, he shouted, his voice raw. My boss got a tip about errors. I could lose everything. Sarah paced, her sweater loose, hair a tangled mess. This is your fault, she snapped, jabbing a finger at him. You and your useless job. Now my dresses are gone and you can't even provide. The words hung heavy, each one a crack in their fragile world. I leaned against the house, the siding rough under my fingers, my breath shallow but steady. Tom's desperation was palpable, his weakness laid bare. Sarah's fury only deepened the wound, her voice rising to a screech. We need that house money, Tom. You promised. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. I tried, okay? Mom won't budge. My chest tightened, not with guilt, but with clarity. He'd chosen her over me, and now he was paying for it. I slipped back to my room, the garden's quiet fading behind me. The notebook waited on my desk, its leather cover cool under my touch. I flipped it open, scanning the crossed out lines. Sarah's dress is done. Tom's job in motion. Their marriage was fraying, their dreams unraveling, and I'd barely lifted a finger this time. The living room voices grew louder, Sarah's accusations blending with Tom's weak defenses. I closed the notebook, my lips curling. They were destroying themselves, but I wasn't finished. Their talk of selling the house lingered, a challenge I'd meet head-on. I stepped out of the lawyer's office, the glass door swinging shut with a soft thud. The documents in my hand felt heavy, their crisp pages stamped with a blue seal that declared my absolute ownership of the house. My house. The Seattle air was sharp, tinged with the salt of Puget Sound, and I inhaled deeply, my steps firm on the sidewalk. I'd secured my future, And no one, not Sarah, not Tom, could take it from me. By the time I pulled into the driveway, dusk had settled, the house's windows glowing faintly against the gray sky. Inside, the living room was a mess of scattered clothes and half-packed boxes, Sarah's things strewn like wreckage. She sat on the couch, her blouse crumpled, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a chipped mug. Tom stood by the window, his hands fidgeting with his sleeve, his face pale. They looked broken, their usual bravado gone. I set the documents on the coffee table, the papers weighed a quiet thunder. Sarah's gaze snapped to them, her breath hitching. "What's that?" she asked, her voice brittle. "My insurance," I said, my tone even cold. "This house is mine. Always will be." Sarah lunged forward, grabbing my wrist, her nails digging in. "You can't do this," she cried, her voice cracking. "We can't afford a place of our own. You owe us." I yanked my arm free, stepping back, my eyes locked on hers. "I owe you nothing," I said, each word a stone. Tom shuffled closer, his voice low, pleading. "Mom, we're drowning. The money from the house, it'd save us." His eyes, so like the boy I'd raised, begged for mercy. I felt a pang, but it passed. He'd made his choice. The air was thick, the room stifling with their desperation. I turned, leaving the documents on the table, and walked to the garden. The evening was cool, the roses drooping under the weight of dew, their scent faint but steady. I stood by the bench, my hands in my pockets, the documents' power coursing through me. Behind me, the house hummed with their whispers, Sarah's voice, low and urgent, Tom's murmurs in response. They were plotting something, maybe an apology, maybe another scheme. I didn't care. They thought they could sway me, but I was done bending. Their whispers followed me, a faint echo of their crumbling world. The living room smelled of fresh paint, its walls a crisp white that gleamed under the new ceiling light. I stood in the center, a can of paint at my feet, its lid speckled with drips. The house felt alive again, mine in a way it hadn't been for years. I'd spent the morning scrubbing away the traces of Sarah's chaos, her glossy magazines now stacked in a cardboard box labeled with her name in Sharpie. The box sat by the door, a final eviction notice. Footsteps echoed in the hall, and I turned to see Sarah and Tom, their faces drawn, their postures defeated. Sarah's sweater hung loose, her nails bitten to stubs. She dropped to her knees, her voice trembling. "Alice, please," she said, tears streaking her face. "I was wrong. I'm sorry for everything." Tom stood behind her, his jacket wrinkled, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Mom," he added, his voice breaking, "we'll make it right. Just give us a chance." Their words were a plea, raw and desperate, but they slid off me like rain on glass. I'd heard enough promises, enough lies. I stepped back, the paint can clinking as I nudged it aside. "Your chance ended when you chose each other over me," I said, my voice steady, unyielding. Sarah's sob caught in her throat, her hands clutching the couch for support. Tom reached for my shoulder, but I shrugged him off, my eyes cold. "This house is my home," I said. "You're no longer part of it." I picked up the box of magazines, its weight a satisfying burden, and carried it to the curb, tossing it beside the trash cans. The thud echoed, final. Sarah's wail followed me back inside, but I didn't look back. In the hallway, I paused by a framed photo of Tom, 5 years old, in a denim jacket, grinning at a fair. My fingers brushed the glass, a flicker of warmth in my chest quickly buried. I'd loved him fiercely, but love didn't mean surrender. I walked to the garden, the photo's image lingering in my mind. The roses glowed in the twilight, their petals soft against the fading light. Sarah and Tom's voices drifted from the house, hushed now, defeated. I stood tall, the air cool on my skin, my thoughts turning to what came next. Freedom was close and I was ready to claim it. The garden was awash in sunset gold, the roses catching the last light like tiny flames. I stood by the bench, a faded photo of Tom in my hand, his 6-year-old smile frozen in a denim jacket. The paper crinkled as I slipped it into my pocket, a quiet farewell to the past. I'd fought for this moment, clawed my way back from their betrayal, and now the house was mine, my life was mine. The air carried the sweet tang of blooming flowers, a reminder of the roots I'd tended through years of neglect. I was ready to grow again. Inside, I sat at my desk, the old Dell humming as I enrolled in an online teaching course. My fingers danced across the keys, each click a step toward the dream I'd shelved for Tom's sake. The room smelled of fresh paint, the walls a blank canvas for my future. I opened a suitcase, its blue fabric worn but sturdy, and folded a simple cotton dress inside. Nothing flashy, just mine. Italy waited, a trip I'd planned in secret, funded by the flea market cash and years of careful saving. The thought of cobblestone streets and warm espresso made my heart lift, light in a way it hadn't been in decades. Outside, a white moving truck rumbled up, its logo faded but clear. I watched from the window as Sarah's last boxes were loaded, her designer bags stuffed into garbage sacks, Tom's old briefcase tossed in beside them. They were gone, their lease on my life expired. John, the neighbor, leaned on his fence, a newspaper tucked under his arm. "Italy, huh?" he called, grinning. "About time you did something for yourself, Alice." I smiled, nodding. "It's just the start," I said, my voice steady. Back in the garden, I held the plane ticket, its thin paper gleaming in the fading light. Rome one way, a promise of new horizons. The roses swayed, their scent wrapping around me like an embrace. I'd given everything to Sarah and Tom, poured my heart into a family that discarded me. But now, standing on my own ground, I was whole. The ticket felt like a key, unlocking a life I'd almost forgotten I deserved. As the stars blinked into view, I smiled, my thoughts already halfway across the ocean. This was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you listen to it in the comments. Thank you for watching.